Hello and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 140. And today there's going to be two halves to this particular episode. We're going to talk about the 10-year anniversary of Splatoon, as well as my recent playthrough of Metaphor ReFantazio. But before we do that, we have a quick pickup. It's very quick. I'm wearing it. It is this awesome Grand Festival t-shirt that the Yeti did. Couldn't resist. It was perfect and really on point for the discussion we're going to lead off with, which is Splatoon. Let's talk about Splatoon. I can't believe that it's been 10 years since Splatoon came out. Before I get too much deeper, I do want to thank KitaNash for the Splatoon 3 footage you're seeing. I blocked names of her community just to kind of, just wanting to use some footage, and I'd like to promote one of my favorite streamers, but at the same time, I don't necessarily need to be broadcasting all of her community members. So I blocked all that information, but please go check out her Twitch and her YouTube channels. They will be in the description below. So I was pretty much on board with Splatoon right from the start. I got Splatoon 1 for the Wii U and spent a lot of time playing that game and really had a wonderful time. The single player was okay, but it was actually the multiplayer, which I'm not a online multiplayer interested person, really. And to this day, Splatoon remains the only franchise that I can say that I like playing online. But the formula was there almost from the beginning. You have two teams trying to fight for dominance on a map, and the goal in Turf War, at the very least, is not to outdo your opponent with quote-unquote kills, or splats as they're referred to in Splatoon, but to cover the most ground, which was a very novel way of completely twisting the entire team-based shooter format. Splats are important because it delays the other team from being able to cover the ground as effectively when they have less people. But it wasn't really the be-all, end-all of the game. And I think that's a really important distinction that I think made this a lot more fun for me. But ultimately what would happen is that I would get a little bored of just doing Turf War by itself. I feel like while it is a compelling gameplay mechanic, I felt like I needed a little bit more. So ranked modes in Splatoon have really been my focus. And those have generally gotten better with each game. Splatoon 1's ranked had Tower and Splat zones at the start, and then eventually got Rainmaker as an update, and then they added Clan Blitz in Splatoon 2, and then they didn't really add anything new for Splatoon 3 on the ranked front, which is interesting. But ultimately, what I think got me into Splatoon in the first place is just the aesthetic. I love the art design, the music is fantastic. The Inklings are just really well-designed character ideas that have just this really amazing gimmick of being able to swim in their own color ink and refuel their ink tank by doing so. It's a brilliant balance of being able to be on the offensive and defensive. And it's just a great gameplay hook to me. I really feel like it just adds so much to the game. And that's not even taking into account that you can carry different weapons that have different specials and bombs attached to them. One thing that I do hope Splatoon 4 might consider, although I kind of doubt it will, because I feel like the balance would go out the window if players could pick whatever they wanted. But I do think it would be fun to have a mode that's not for any points or any rank or anything like that, that you could pick a primary weapon, a bomb, and a special of your choosing and just go to town. That would be fun. But I understand balancing-wise how much of a nightmare that would be. But with that balance, you've got a variety of different weapon types. So you've got basically your blasters, which are shotguns. You've got, I forget what they just call just regular old shooting things, like the zapper, or what Kita's using right now. There's rollers, there's brushes. In later games, you would get a whole bunch of new stuff like bows and splatlings, dualies. The bombs have a nice variety as well. They're kind of based on real-world things. So you've got like the curling bomb or water balloons. And then the specials are truly more grandiose attacks that can vary from doing what's called a splashdown to summoning something to help you out, to being able to move around the map quickly, to having a big invincible transformation. It really just depends. So like Kita here has the Reef Slider in Splatoon 3 as her special, which you jump on a giant inflatable and scoot forward, and you have a much higher damage ratio. You can see someone there's got the hammer. The Ultra Stamp, as they call it here. Neither of those are truly invincible, but they do make it a lot harder for you to be splatted while they're out. And matches last 3 minutes in a normal turf war and 5 minutes in a ranked. So it feels like the time goes really, really well. And I just really think that Splatoon did everything right that it needed to. There's just so much to like about just the core conceit of the game that I really, really, really think it's a phenomenal series. The thing that I want to kind of conclude this on is that I think Splatoon 1 had an okay solo campaign, but I think 2 really stepped it up. 2's default one was better, and then Octo Expansion was absolutely amazing. If you haven't played Octo Expansion yet, you should probably consider doing that, because I still think it might be the best single-player experience in Splatoon. 3's was really close to matching it, really close. Did a lot of things right. Really enjoyed it. I think that there was just something about the atmosphere that was in Octo Expansion, plus it was about Pearl and Marina, that really got me excited. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Splatoon 3's DLC campaign. I just don't like the roguelike experience at all, and it is not my thing, and that's basically what that is. So I don't think I'm ever going to probably get around to finishing it, because I just don't have any interest to grind to make it happen. To my detriment, because I will never have Pearl and Marina's hub world in Splatoon 3, because that's an unlockable behind beating it, which makes me sad. Pearl and Marina are my favorite of the idols, although I do like all of them. But I do like Pearl and Marina a lot. They're my favorite characters in this series, some of my favorite characters in any series, to be completely honest. I just really think that they're great. I've touched briefly on the music, but I'll reiterate that the music in Splatoon is absolutely fantastic. They've created this fictional musical world with all these different bands and music styles that just really is amazing if you really think about it, because they're so distinct. It's just, so much of Splatoon is just so well crafted. My biggest complaint really is that Splatoon 3's maps are not that interesting to me. They get really samey, and that's even with all the ones they added later on. So it's unfortunate, because I don't really like that fact. I feel like Splatoon 1 and 2 had a much more engaging map setup than Splatoon 3 ended up with, because 3, I feel like it really leads to entrapment. Like that was a deliberate thing to have the other team just kind of pin you down, and you can't really do anything about it in a lot of the stages. Plus, they kind of brought back all the stages in Splatoon 1 and 2 that I didn't care for as much. 2 did a fantastic job of bringing back all those stages from 1 that I liked, but I really felt like Splatoon 3's map situation was just not ideal for me personally. Before wrapping up, though, I also want to touch on Salmon Run, which is just a fantastic way to implement a horde-style gameplay mode into Splatoon. I think it's really well done. I don't get into it as much as I do ranked mode. That's really where I like to play. But it is a nice change of pace, and if you've got a good team with you, it can be a lot of fun. Oh, we're getting a great casebook example of why I don't like Splatoon 3's maps. This is why. This is exactly why. It's so easy to just have the other team get all up in your face at your launch point, and it's annoying. And they never really remedied that, so I'm hoping Splatoon 4 will. But I think that Splatoon, on the whole, is a fantastic franchise, and I am so looking forward to seeing what they do on the Switch too. And it really means a lot to me. This community is one that I play with a lot, and I really look forward to playing with them again soon when the opportunity arises, as well as with a couple other communities I've formed Splatoon bonds with. I just think it's a fantastic series. And one more time, thank you to KitaNash for the footage. Let's switch over to Metaphor. Metaphor ReFantazio, the latest, I believe, still from Atlas, and the new studio from former Persona lead Studio Zero. I was really impressed. In fact, it ended up being pretty high on my overall top 111 list when it was all said and done. But I am surprised. There's a couple games that I didn't put a whole lot of faith in from 2024. Silent Hill 2 Remake was one, and I was pleasantly mistaken. And Metaphor was one I was really wanting some impressions on before I decided to buy it. And that's because I feel like the former Persona devs, primarily director Hoshino, had done some very questionable writing decisions with the 3 Persona games that he had a hand in, that made me really concerned about anything that he was involved with. Thankfully, a lot of that stuff is absent entirely in Metaphor. In fact, I would argue that, generally speaking, it's not there. Maybe very subtly, but I didn't feel like at any singular point that my gender annoyance sensor was going off at all. I feel like all of the characters in this game are excellently written, have some really compelling narrative stuff that goes on with all of them, and quite a few of them are on my favorite character list now. Stroll, I think, is such a strong secondary lead from the start and just blossoms into this incredible character. Yuna is my favorite character in this game, period. I think she's so fascinating and wonderful. Has a very good anthropological sense about her that I really like. Hemsey is a impressive character, probably the best written character in the whole game with the most compelling arc attached. Really, really, really cool. But there's a whole bunch of other characters in this game that are just superbly handled. And really get this opportunity to engage in a very poignant topic, which is classism and racism, that I feel has come to the forefront in current political situations. It handles that politic discussion incredibly well. Could it be better? Yes. Could it be more nuanced? Yes. It's kind of blunt about it. But I feel like at the very least, having a game that is attempting to say something about a lot of where the world currently sits in terms of class and in terms of race, and finding a group of heroes that rebel against this entire enterprise and work together to try to change the perception of what race is, and demolishing the class structure, I think is fantastic. It really was almost too on point at times. I actually had to walk away a couple times because I needed just to not be in that space in a game and in real life at the same time. Art direction, incredible. This is some of Sojima's best work as a character designer by far. This is also some of the most incredible menu design that I've ever come across. Just impeccable looking game. This piece of artwork is just fantastic, and all of it is, honestly. I love the character designs in this. I've always thought that Sojima is one of the best character designers that is in the medium today, and getting outside of having to do school uniforms and being able to actually flex that a bit with a much more diverse set of characters from different populations really shines here. The gameplay is fantastic. I think that the moment-to-moment, you have a dungeon layout and a overworld and a town. So you have these three basic modes that you're in. Dungeons, of course, you fight things, and the combat engine is very Persona-like, but it's got a few of its own changes that make it stand out, and I think it's a really compelling system that really rewards careful, strategic decision-making when it comes to weaknesses. Otherwise, you might have the same situation happen to you and be in a really bad spot. The dungeon design is fine. I don't think it's as good as some other games that I've played in the RPG space, but I think that they are perfectly serviceable, and there's some really interesting ones towards the end of the game that I like a lot. In particular, the dungeon where you get Yuna, without any spoilers, is truly awesome. I love that whole setup, and discovering what's going on in that place is really cool. The enemy design is out there, and that's a wonderful thing. The bosses are humans, in quotes, and they are, I forget the artist's name, I'll put it in text here, very inspired by that artist, and are just really incredible to look at. Just absolute mind benders of boss design. Truly legendary stuff. The social aspect is greatly improved. There's a lot of opportunities to do something in the day. I feel like it's very well balanced in this game. I was able to max out everybody by the end of the game that you can build a social link with, which I greatly appreciate, having that ability to do that, plus engage with the political aspect of building up your kingliness, so to speak, to become a good ruler. You have these virtues that you need to level up as you go through the game. So the game has enough days built within it to max that out, to max out all your social links, and to have a little bit of time to do some other stuff if you budget it well. So I wasn't paying super close attention, but it was still nice to know that I had the time to be able to do all that. That was something that bugged me sometimes with Persona games, is that I felt like I couldn't get everybody to a level I was happy with. The nice thing about this game too is that there is no romantic element really with any of the social links. It's not built that way. You're not trying to like get laid like you are in Persona with the opposite gender of your male protagonist. It's all about camaraderie, and it's all about the relationships being strong to have this really good united front. That's not to say that there is not a little bit of hints at romance with a couple of the characters, Yuna in particular, but I don't think it's handled poorly, and I don't think that's the point. I think it's not the main focus of your relationships, which I think is a big improvement over Persona. I think that it's also cool that you get to help change minds of some of the prominent NPCs, and get them to rethink how they're approaching the world. I like that a lot too. Without getting too deep into story spoilers, I think that it's a very good story overall. It's got a few interesting twists and turns in it that I think were well handled. It's a bit predictable, sure, I won't argue that. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I really enjoyed the narrative, and its biggest issue, honestly, is that it wants to keep its antagonist through the entire thing. So there's times where it's like, we won! No, we didn't! Contrivances happen. But it's alright. I think it was done to show the dogged determination of stubbornness, honestly, of being so up your own ass that you can't see any outside perspectives, which I think is handled well. The biggest thing that I like the music, but I don't love the music, and I think Meguro is one of the greatest composers that I've heard, because all of the Atlus soundtracks he's been involved with, which is primarily Persona, have been bangers. And that's not to say that this soundtrack isn't good. It's just different, and there's parts of it that I think are phenomenal, but it doesn't have the catchy earworminess of the Persona soundtracks, and it wasn't designed to. They're not really the same style of game. Maybe I went in with that mindset, and that is my own fault, that the soundtrack didn't wow me instantly, but I do like it a lot, and I do want to engage more with it in the near future. Voice work, fantastic. Every single character has a phenomenal voice actor or actress attached to them. I really think that Atlus did a great job of getting some talent outside of the US, it seems, for this. I recognized a couple of names from the British scene, but I don't think all of them are British. I don't remember. But I think they all did a fantastic job. And again, everything that the Persona series was in terms of the social link dynamic, the balance between the relationships and the combat, is really brought together in Metaphor in a way that I think it's their strongest game as a team. Taking everything that they learned from the 3 Persona games, erasing a lot of its problematic elements, and just synthesizing it all together to bring a really original, compelling new IP out of Atlus. Granted, there are Shin Megami Tensei / Persona elements lurking in this game in a couple of the classes. In particular, the Summoner class has a whole bunch of demons from that series. There's another reference that I'll keep on the DL, but it's not at the foreground of what's going on. It's primarily designed to be a standalone entry in a brand new world, and I want to see more of this world. I think they set up a possible sequel really well. My biggest complaint, honestly, is I would like to have had Katarina be a playable character. It seems like she was really close to being one, and then they kind of backed off from that, probably because they had a hard time fitting in another character. In the grand scheme of everything, I think Metaphor deserved all the hype it got last year. I think that it is just a simply brilliant game that I was pleasantly mistaken about again. And I'm so glad that I was in both Silent Hill 2 Remake's case as well as with Metaphor. Alright, that's everything. I hope that you enjoyed this little in-between as we are really about to get into a whole bunch of Switch 2 and Summer Games Fest stuff very shortly. But with Metaphor being something that I just recently finished, I had to talk about it before all that, and then Splatoon's 10-year anniversary just coincidentally landed at the same time frame, so it was a great, nice little prelude to the future of what we're going to be doing for a bit. Alright, well, I will see you soon for all of the new and exciting that will be happening. Take care, friends.